Next, I want to talk about our special meetings we had last week. I'm going to share with you, I just feel like I need to. I know that I want to. I want to share with you 3 reasons that I'm glad that Zachary Bauer came. Number 1, I'm glad he came because it reminded me and reminds us it's not about us. A couple of years ago, Yahweh impressed upon me that we were to go to Georgia to see Jason Tao, Pursuing Truth Ministries, and that we were to carry an offering. And so that's what we did. When we arrived, we weren't there very long before it was confirmed that we were supposed to be there and that we were supposed to bring an offering. I rejoiced that day because it revealed to me that Yahweh can trust us, that we will hear and respond to what He asks us to do. It's not about us. It's about Him and it's about His kingdom. There are many people who came in last week who are very new to Torah. That means they have recently been called out of Babylon by Yahweh, and Zachary was able to encourage them and excite them. I shepherd and I instruct. My strength is not in exciting people. And there are times people need to be encouraged and excited. But it was also necessary for people to be able to be encouraged and excited in person by this man of YouTube fame whom they were familiar with. And I'm glad that Zachary was there. I'm glad that Yahweh knew that He could trust us to provide a place for Him to send His children to benefit from Zachary. When Yahweh tells us to do a thing, our first thought cannot ever be, well, I wonder how this is going to benefit me.
Right.
Our first thought has to be, yes, sir.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Make no mistake about it, you can't give a cup of cold water in his name and not be rewarded for it. But the most treasured reward that we should seek is that sense of delight that comes from knowing that we did what we were supposed to do. The second reason I'm glad that Zachary came is because it allowed us to become familiar with his genuineness and his integrity.
Yes, sir.
I've seen many guest speakers across my decades of being in the pastorate. I've never seen one like Zach. Around 1983, 84, I was pastoring in Morris, Alabama. I was good friends with the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Gardendale. One day he and I think we were eating lunch, but whatever day it was, he shared this with me. He had a well-known Baptist pastor come in from out of state and speak to his people on a Sunday morning. He did not take up a special offering for him, but instead gave him what is referred to as an honorarium. You've heard that phrase, right? We're not going to pay you for coming, but we'll give you an honorarium for coming, kind of a thing. The pastor of First Baptist Gardendale was shocked a few days later to receive a letter from this pastor, this guest speaker, who chastised him. His letter stated this: you should seriously consider increasing the amount of the honorariums that you give. He came in and spoke one service, was given a check for $5,000, and that was not enough.
Wow.
At the time, that would have been equal to about 6 months' pay for me in the pastoring. But that was not enough. He chastised this church for not giving him more. I've seen abuses.
Yes.
I once went to a meeting, I think I've mentioned this one to you before, where a traveling evangelist had all of the men come forward and line up across the front of the church. And all of the men did exactly what he told them to do. They all stood up and went stood in front of the church. I was the only man left in the congregation. I did not get up and go to the front because I'd already seen things that he was doing that troubled me. He had all of those men reach in their back pocket, pull their billfolds out, and stick it out. He went down the line, took their billfolds away from them, opened it up, took all the money out of it, and handed their billfolds back. He had just bought a new Winnebago. He announced to the congregation that God had told him that they were to pay for it that week.
Wow.
I have seen some, is that not true, Marie?
It's true.
I've seen some abuses. I've seen people who required that they only eat at certain high-end restaurants when they come. I've seen it personally. I've seen people who wanted to be escorted in and escorted out, and you carry their Bible for them when they go in and out, and to have absolutely no contact with the people. They were to be protected from the people. They wanted to protect their anointing. I've seen people who would not even trust us to receive an offering for them, but insisted that they do it themselves. Their gods were their bellies.
Yes, sir.
Their only desire was to make merchandise of the people. They were consumed by covetousness and greed. They did not serve Yahweh, they served Mammon.
Right.
They were not servants of the Messiah, they were hirelings. This was not the case with Zachary. I did not ask his permission to share this with you, but I'm going to share it anyway. Thursday afternoon, I picked him up, carried him to his motel. I finished my day's work and went back, picked him up so that we could go to dinner. While we're eating, he said, "I don't know what you normally do, but I would prefer that you not take up an offering." That caused a dilemma in me. I despise preachers who are hirelings, and I despise preachers who abuse their position for filthy lucre. But I also know that there are true servants of Yahweh that we are to care for, and that we're to bring forth or send forth after a godly manner.
Yes, sir.
After they depart from us. It brings me great joy to do that. Paul received an awesome revelation when he read in Torah that you are not to muzzle the ox that treads out the corn. Paul came to understand that that wasn't written for the oxen only, but it was also written for the servants of Yahweh who go out to do his work. He knew that Yahweh didn't write it just for the oxen. Paul said, after reading that in Torah, Paul said that he who plows should plow in hope. And what he meant by that, there ought to be a return.
Yes, sir.
For working in the kingdom. 3 John 3 says that when Yahweh sends someone to us to minister to us, that we need to recognize that they receive nothing from the Gentiles, but that it is our responsibility, as I said earlier, to send them forth after a godly manner, after a godly sort. We should take care of them financially. So the things I just shared with you, I told to Zachary. I told him that according to the scripture, it is our responsibility and it would be our honor to take care of him. Then he said this to me. Sorry, wow, give me just a minute. He said, "Do you remember when you were a child and Christmas was getting close? And do you remember that the closer it got, you became consumed with the thought, what am I going to get this time? What am I going to get this time?" And the excitement built and built and built. I said, "Yes, sir, I remember." He said, "I never want my speaking engagements to be that way. I never want to be headed to a place wondering, what am I going to get this time?" I did not dare to try to talk him out of that personal conviction. I told him I would abide by his wishes. That's the reason you never heard me mention money, and you never heard him mention money. But when I speak of his genuineness and integrity, I'm speaking about more than the purity of his motives when it came to money. I saw a man who sincerely loved Yahweh's people, and he had a burning desire to help them in every way that he could. He stood on his feet for 8 hours on the Sabbath and never showed any signs of being wearied by it. Both Friday night and Saturday, he encouraged people to come to him and to talk. He was in no hurry to leave. I have never seen that from anybody. And I've been around a while. He was accessible. He was loving. He was kind. He gave of himself without reservation. Saturday, after it was all over with, I loaded him up. He and Joshua, Will, Eva, and Sam went with me to carry him back to his hotel room. We hadn't gone very far down the road till he said, "Where are we going?" I told him that I was taking him back to his hotel. Let him rest. I know that when we did the feast, these are his feast seminar. After that seminar, I felt like I'd been beat with a bat. I was exhausted. So I knew he had to be tired. I said, "I'm taking you back to your hotel." He didn't say another word. We drove on into Huntsville, and as we got closer to Huntsville, or we're coming off 72 on to 565, I said to him, "I'm going to drop you off, Zach, let you rest. Maybe Joshua wants to swim. Then I'll come back at sunset. I'll pick you up, and we'll go to dinner." "No, sir," he said, "I don't want you to drive all the way back down here. I can order out." I said, "Yes, sir, I know you can go order out, but it would be an honor for me to come and have dinner with you before you leave in the morning." And I said, "I've got Sam and Eva and Will with me. We'll probably just go back, hang out with Brian for a little while. I'm not going to drive all the way back home, and then I'll come back later." He said, "Well, I want to go hang out with Brian." I said, "You don't need to rest?" "Nah." "Hey, Brian, tell your wife I got company coming." I did. I sat back and watched as he engaged Brian and Krista for almost 2 hours. I'm just telling you, I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
He agreed to come without asking me how big we were, how many I thought we'd have, or how much money would be available. It was a divine appointment. He really only does 3 a year. That's not just something he says, it's truth. He does 3 a year. It was a decision that he and his wife made because the demand on his life is so great. He could be speaking somewhere every week. But they have a family, they have a farm, they have a homestead. And they agreed to 3 a year. The fact that he was able to come here to North Alabama was a divine appointment. It was Yahweh prompting me while I was minding my own business, sitting at my desk, send him a message. And I did. Just so happened somebody had canceled. And he agreed to come. A divine appointment. Yahweh had me ask at precisely the right time. I'm glad that Zachary came. Third reason I'm glad that he came. Because my desired purpose, when I asked him to come, my desired purpose was accomplished. I wanted him to connect with our young adults. And I saw that happen. Zachary was somebody that y'all could relate to easily. Zachary was younger. Several times I told Marie before he came that that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see you, the young adults. I wanted y'all to see that this mighty move of Yahweh in these last days has to be carried out by you. Bill and Teresa are old. Conrad and Lisa are old. And I'm about to catch them. Now, we're not going out to pasture just yet. But.
That's what old ministers do.
there is a need for servants of Yahweh to lead this move that's just beginning. I wanted you to see that you can. I wanted you to see that you should. And I wanted you to see that you must. If you're waiting for a call, don't. Nobody called David to fight lions and bears. He just saw it needed to be done, so he did it. Nobody called David to fight Goliath. He volunteered to go do it. Yahweh loves volunteers. In the portals of heaven, one day Yahweh said, "Who shall I send? Who's going to go for me?" He didn't say you or you or you. He said who? And Isaiah heard it and said, "Here am I. Send me." Yahweh loves volunteers. We cannot just be hearers of Torahs. We have to become the defenders and the teachers of Torah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the instruction in Deuteronomy. You remember we quote it often that we are to learn, keep, and do.
Yes, sir.
So learning and doing is just part of it.
Yes, sir.
We're also to keep it. And what does keep mean? It means to protect it. It means to guard it. It means to defend it. And we can't defend it if we haven't prepared ourselves to do so. Keeping is the other part. So I'm glad Zachary came and made a connection with you, and I'm hoping that from that connection you see it's your job to carry this on.